Chapter 8 A Carriage Ride. Samuel woke with the sun shining in his eyes, as it had done the previous morning. He stretched, got up, dressed, and woke Barklin. Barklin was easy to rouse this morning and got out of his bed easily enough. They readied themselves and walked across the hall to Averly and Rose's room and began knocking on the door. There was no answer. They both knocked simultaneously. Movement could be heard from the other side of the door. "We'll be out in a few minutes," said Rose groggily against the door. "All right, we'll be here," said Barklin. The two of them stood there in the hallway as Rose could be heard waking Averly. "Wake up, Averly, they're waiting for us," said Rose. Averly snorted, and the sound of heavy blankets falling to the floor could be heard. Right, said Averly, as the floorboards creaked, accepting her weight. They shuffled around the room as Barklin and Samuel bided their time patiently, leaning against the wall next to the door. When the ladies were ready, the door opened and they stepped out into the hallway, dressed and more or less hoping that breakfast was the next part of their day. "Shall we head down to the kitchen and see if Jeffries will let us have something to eat before we have to pack our rations?" asked Averly, stretching her arms over her head, yawning, then smiling. "That's probably a good idea. It's going to be a long day sitting in the carriage. We might as well try and get something to eat," said Samuel. Rose and Barklin nodded, and the four of them walked down the hallway and the stairs until they came to the kitchen, where they found Jeffries and Rowan sitting at the kitchen counter sharing a pot of herbal tea and some iced fruit cakes. "Morning, younglings," nodded Rowan as they entered the room. The group offered their hellos and walked over to the teapot where cups were waiting for them. Barklin poured them all a cup of tea and handed Rose hers, since she was unable to reach the high counter. Jeffries pulled them up stools from under the counter, and the group sat with them, sipping their tea. Jeffries offered each of them a small plate with currant cakes frosted with orange icing. "Would you like some breakfast?" asked Jeffries pleasantly. Each took one, thanked them in kind, and began eating their breakfast. "Once you're done with that, we'll load you up with your supplies," said Rowan, pointing to 4 stacks of increasing size laying against the nearest wall of the kitchen by the door and conspicuously marked larder in white script. Each sack had a paper tag with their name written on it in black ink. "You'll find what you need for 3 weeks of travel in each package. I've checked each of them twice over against the Terry list, and it's all there," said Jeffries, sipping his tea. "That was nice of you," said Rose, taking a bite out of her breakfast roll. "It wasn't any trouble," replied Jeffries. "You're going to go through all of it and organize it into daily allotments in front of me," said Rowan. "It'll make it easier to eat when you don't have to think about it. It means we can travel further when we're not thinking about what we have to cook or eat when we stop." "That makes sense. Do you think it's going to be that hard, though?" asked Barklin, placing his tea cake down on his plate momentarily. "Oh, yes. I plan to travel you hard. We don't have the benefit of taking the easy way with this, unfortunately," responded Rowan. Barklin looked down at his breakfast, blinked, picked it up, and bit into it thoughtfully, chewing slowly. "All right, then," said Barklin, after swallowing his mouthful. They ate their breakfast quickly and taking the time to each have 2 cups of tea before going over to their food rations and spreading them out on the counter. Barklin lifted Rose's pack onto the counter for her as she climbed up onto the stool. "Thanks, Barky," said Rose, smiling up at him. "No problem," said Barklin, moving over to a section of the counter, spreading out the contents of his supplies out as Rowan instructed. "All right, break everything into their food groups and into the number of servings you have in front of you. We're going to put them into equal servings and then bundle them with the servings into equal parts to create a day's rations. So we have a total day's rations that can be easily kept as singular meals. It's the same thing every time, unfortunately. You'll get used to it. It should keep you healthy and give you enough energy to keep going where you need." "You have your extra water skins that came with your bags, right?" asked Rowan, standing on the counter between Samuel and Averly's collection of foodstuffs. "Yes," replied the group in unison. "Good. Water is the most important thing to have when we're going to the marshes and the desert. We're going to be traveling by water source to water source, so we're not going to be going more than a day without being able to refill our water. Some of it may not taste good, but we'll boil it before we use it, so it'll be safe to drink. And that's the important part," said Rowan, walking down the counter towards Rose as she organized her food into equal piles. The package had included small bags that fit the small portions perfectly. Rowan instructed the group to place their meals into those bags until all the meals were completed. It was quick work, and when everyone was done, they were left with equally numbered piles of meals. "Go into the hallway and grab the remaining pouch from your rucksack and load your rations into it. Then place that into your bag. Place that into the top of your rucksack because we'll be eating halfway through the day, which means you'll be accessing it twice as often as the other parts of your kit, which makes it easier," said Rowan. They did as they were told, and soon enough the travelers were ready for their next trek. They walked out into the hallway. Jeffries came with them and watched as they hoisted their bags onto their shoulders and went to the door. "Please be careful as you can. I'm sorry the young masters aren't up to wish you off, but I fear the long day's travel took their toll on them all, said Jeffries. You didn't have to apologize for them, said Samuel. We'll see them soon enough, said Rose. Yes, I suppose you will. It was a pleasure serving you. The carriage is waiting for you, said Jeffries, as he stepped by the group and opened the front door. A carriage identical in shape to the one that had driven them around the previous day was idling on the street below. Instead of the green of the last one, though, this one was a deep and fiery red with gold accents. Express was stenciled on the side in golden writing. An otter on a driver's cap stood against the front fender, waiting patiently. Rose turned back to Jeffries. We'll do the very best we can to find the amber stones. You have our promise, said Rose, smiling oddly. Jeffries bent down, placing both paws on her shoulders. I know, child. It means the world to me. I'm very grateful to all of you, said Jeffries, releasing Rose and looking out over all of their faces. You'll do very well together, I just know it, said Jeffries. We'd best get started, said Rowan, nodding his head over to the carriage. Right. Yes, better to get the show on the road then, said Jeffries, offering a small smile, and he began ushering the group out onto the street and down the steps towards the gleaming red carriage. They walked up to the otter, who tipped his hat at them when they approached him. Morning all, said the otter. Good morning, said Averly, smiling. Ready for the trip then, asked the otter. Yes, do you know where to take us, asked Rowan. Head east into the forest until the road stops, or I'm unable to take you any further, replied the otter. That's right. What's your name? Daniel, responded the otter. Good to meet you, Daniel. Let's get started then, shall we? Asked Rowan. Right then, sir, replied Daniel, walking from the side of the carriage towards the back of it and opened the trunk. If you'll please put your luggage here, I'll keep it secured until we stop for a meal or any bathroom breaks you may need, said Daniel, sweeping his arm towards the deep recesses of the trunk. The group unloaded their gear, gently placing their weapons in pre-designated brackets designed for such things on the sides. When they were finished, Daniel walked forward and bent into the trunk and closed the brackets, securing the weapons snugly in place. That should keep them safe from any movement while we get going, said Daniel, as Samuel looked on from behind him. Do things move around a lot? Asked Samuel. Some. This isn't a regular carriage, said Daniel. It's not? Asked Rose. No, not really. It's about 3 times as fast as a regular carriage in a straight line. That's why we paint Express on the side in big red letters, so let others know that when they see us to let us through, said Daniel, as he closed and locked the trunk. He walked them to the passenger's compartment, stepped up to the door and opened it. If you'll step in and get comfortable, we'll get out on the road out of the city as soon as we can, said Daniel, stepping down from the door. The group filed into the passenger compartment. Rowan was the last to enter, sitting next to Averly as she climbed onto the lavish plush seating of the carriage. Daniel stepped up and closed the door, securing it. Rose looked around the interior of the carriage as Daniel walked around the outside and made his way inside the driver's compartment up at the front of the carriage. It was much nicer than the one they had ridden in the previous day. The seating cushions were thicker than the other carriages, and there were trays with glass bottles filled with amber and red liquids next to glasses secured to metal racks that sat in the center of the passenger compartment. The curtains hanging from either end of the windows were held back with the same gilded rope fittings that secured the glasses safely in place. The glass divider that separated the driver's compartment from their area was also made from a dark, smoky glass that was impossible to see through. Daniel slid the glass back and popped his head through. The drinks are complimentary. The doors have been secured for your safety, so please let me know when you'll need to get out, and I'll find a safe place to do so, said Daniel. Why are the doors locked from the outside? Asked Sparkling, mildly alarmed. It can be quite dangerous when we get up to speed. We wouldn't want anyone opening the door and falling out, responded Daniel nonchalantly. That makes sense, said Rose, leaning her weight against the door, testing it, which didn't budge. Rose sat back down, busying herself with one of the crystal decanters in the middle of the compartment. As Daniel started the carriage, moved it into the street. It accelerated quickly. Barkland steadied himself against the seat and sat back, getting comfortable. He reached into a satchel around his neck and pulled out his current book and thumbed it to the current page and began reading it. He found it easy enough to read while in motion, finding that it calmed him rather than made him feel ill. Averly and Samuel looked out their windows as the city passed by them quickly and indifferent to their passing, still waking in the morning sunshine. Rowan sat quietly with his arms crossed and his eyes closed, not moving. He seemed to be meditating. Rose finished her drink, placing it in the designated cup holder that kept it from spilling by securing it around its circumference, and played with the mechanism, raising and lowering the glass against it again and again until she grew bored, and then let it rest there. Then she stared at Rowan as he sat there motionless. It wasn't until she realized that she hadn't moved for a while herself that she noticed the small rhythmic rise and fall of his chest, and just as she was starting to doze hypnotically herself, a small snore escaped from him. Rowan had fallen asleep already. It's probably a good thing, thought Rose. He's got the right idea, resting before we have all that traveling to do. She leant back into the chair, resting against the armrest and relaxed her body, attempting to do the same. She listened to the sound of the wheels on the road and the thumping and hiss of the carriage as it moved, feeling the force of it against her body as it slowed and accelerated around and through every corner, leading out of the city, heading eastward towards the forest. She began to doze. Avery looked over at Rose, who had a peaceful look on her face, her eyes closed, her chin resting on her chest, and smiled. "She can sleep almost anywhere, can't she?" asked Avery, pointing at Rose with one finger. "Oh, yeah. When she wants to be comfortable, she knows how to do it," said Samuel. "Maybe there was some alcohol in whatever it was that she drank," asked Barkland. Avery got up and reached for the glass next to Rose, giving it a curious sniff. It smelled faintly bitter and very sweet. Avery sat back down. "I have no idea." "Maybe," said Avery. "She looks cute," said Samuel, looking at Rose. Avery and Barkland looked at one another and raised an eyebrow, smiling. Samuel blushed and went back to sketching in his notebook. "What are you drawing?" asked Barkland, looking over Samuel's shoulder. "Oh, nothing," responded Samuel, flipping to the next page. Barkland grabbed the notebook from Samuel and flipped back to the previous page. On the paper in red pencil was a small sketch of Rose sitting in the chair sleeping. "You're drawing her!" exclaimed Barkland gleefully. "Well," said Samuel. "It's pretty good," said Avery, taking the notebook from Barkland. "I need something to draw on. The buildings are moving too fast, and she's right there," said Samuel, blushing an even deeper shade of crimson. No, it's great," said Barkland, smiling. Avery handed back the notebook to Samuel and winked at him when their eyes made contact. He looked shocked. She smiled knowingly. Samuel looked down at the paper and blushed furiously. "I just wanted something to draw," said Samuel. Right, said Barkland. "We get that," said Avery, and they shared a look. Samuel turned the page and began to furiously sketch the nearest thing to him, the tray with the drink containers in them. "See, I just needed something to draw," said Samuel. Okay, said Barkland, trying not to laugh. Avery stifled back laughter as well as Samuel held up a rush and not as well-drawn sketch of the drinks tray. Samuel let out a long breath, doing his best to calm down. "You draw whatever or whomever you want. We were just curious," said Avery. Samuel flipped back to his page with Rose on it, looked over at it, and smiled, calming down. "Thanks. I just thought she would like a sketch," said Samuel. "I would, but only after my nap," said Rose, opening one eye towards Samuel and smiling. Samuel gulped and looked shocked. "All right, then," said Samuel, offering a small smile back. "Make sure you get my good side, okay?" said Rose, closing her eye and relaxing once again. Samuel's smile widened, and he began adding to a sketch of Rose. Barkland and Avery looked at Rose and back at Samuel, who had lost himself in his work, looked back at one another, and grinned. Rowan remained motionless as the carriage continued down the streets of the city. They came to the eastern gate of Tens area, roughly an hour and a half of traveling through the city, passing underneath it and out into a wide paved road underneath the morning sunshine. As the number of carriages and small carts pulled by tired, sweating animals diminished, the carriage picked up speed, weaving in and out of the traffic until it was nearly the only thing on the road. There was a slight bounce inside the compartment when the pavement changed from stone to packed dirt, the sound of the wheels changing from a collection of resolute clops to that of continuous sliding. The force of the impact was enough to wake Rose from her slumber. She had spread out in her chair. Rose rubbed her eyes and yawned as she sat up from her laying position she had woken up in. She looked out at the others in the compartment. Barkland was still reading from his book. Avery was reading from her spell book, having taken a page from Samuel's notebook and one of his drawing pencils, and was practicing her rune work on the small counter built into her armrest. Samuel was sketching Avery as she sat busy with her work, her tongue protruding slightly from her mouth from the effort of concentration. "How are things going? How long have we been traveling?" asked Rose sleepily. "A few hours. It'll be midday," said Rowan, without opening his eyes. Rose looked at him. "I thought you were asleep," said Rose. "Rest and sleep are two different things, child. Both are needed," said Rowan. "Could have sworn I heard you snoring back in town," said Samuel, not raising his head from the page. "Be that as it may, I'm not sleeping now. Do any of you need to use the bathroom?" asked Rowan. None of them did. "Unfortunately, my age means I do," said Rowan. He walked across the compartment and rapped on the window. The partition slid back. "Sir?" asked Daniel. "Bathroom break, if you please, Daniel," said Rowan. "Sure thing," said Daniel. The carriage immediately began to slow until they stopped in a field with a few trees suitable for what Rowan needed. Daniel stepped out from the carriage and let Rowan out. Once he had relieved himself behind a tree out of view, he jumped back up into the carriage and they were off again. They traveled quickly for most of the early afternoon until Rowan asked if they wanted to stop for lunch. The group decided that if it was better to stop later on in the day to eat because they wanted to get as much time in the carriage, meaning as much distance traveled as possible. "That's good thinking," said Rowan, pleased. "We're happy to wait," said Barkland, thumbing to the next page of his book. He was almost done and looking forward to getting to his next one. They sat and stared out of the windows as the day passed around them, the farmland fields changing to orchards and then copses of trees until there was nothing but the road and trees on either side of them. The carriage picked up to its full speed, and they traveled a great distance in that afternoon. Things were going well until the carriage slowed suddenly, slammed to an abrupt stop, twisting to the left, reared onto the three wheels, and crashed down. They were thrown forward hard against the front of the carriage as it came to a stop in the dirt on the forest road. Badly shaken, Rose attempted to pick herself up from the floor, which was actually the seat where she had rested comfortably a moment before. She found that she couldn't move. Someone was on top of her. "Get off me," said Rose, attempting to lift herself. "I will as soon as I can get my leg out from under you," said Barkland. They unwound from one another, and Rose was able to get up. She looked around the carriage. Rowan and Averly were helping Samuel pick himself up off the floor. He had a large bruise forming on the side of his face, just below his right eye, where his face had struck the wall. "You all right, Samuel?" asked Rose, concerned. "Yes," said Samuel, dazed. "I think we hit something." The partition, which had cracked slightly in the accident, slid back partially, unable to make the full progression to its open position, jammed 1/3 of the way open. Daniel looked through the opening. "Sorry, folks, looks like we've had a malfunction." "Let me get you out of there so we can take a look," said Daniel. He quickly got out. The door to the passenger compartment wouldn't open when Daniel tried to open it. "Try kicking against it," said Daniel. Averly leaned her full weight against it and kicked with both legs. It squeaked and slammed open as the weight of the door swung its full arc. The group exited out of the leaning carriage and stood on the road surveying the damage of what had happened. So I just signed up for Anchor's funding platform for the podcasters. It seems like a better deal than Patreon at the moment. So I would ask that you click the button that says donate and maybe donate $1 or $5 or $10 a month to us so that we can keep going. And I can produce almost daily or daily podcasts or more in the way that I've been going. And I'll produce book after book after book after book, and then I'll read through them. And I'll keep doing that until I can't see an end to it. It's so much fun. It really is. So please go to anchor.fm/divergentmind and click the donate button, and that'll help me out a whole bunch. Thank you so much, Jay. Okay, well, I'm taking a break, so I might as well do some ads. This is my first one, so bear with me. So, if you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. That's pretty cool. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. And all you have to do is download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Please visit anchor.fm/divergentmind to leave a message so that I may get back to you. Thank you. Have a nice day. Hi everybody. So I've made a new store called animalquest.shop, and I made my first shirt, Barkland Reading, at the Amberstone's house, and I would ask that you go and buy those there. I'll make a few bucks each time you buy something from there, and I have men, women's, baby clothing, and buttons, as well as other accessories, including dog bandanas, which I think are pretty cool. And I'll be adding more merch every week or two for that store as the stories progress and the sequels are written and read. I'll do the same for Divergent Mind. The link again is animalquest.shop. The link for Divergent Mind will be divergentmind.shop as well. Thank you so much, Jay. Okay, so I just wanted to let you know that I have a YouTube channel called Taught Myself, and that I've decided to start selling merch already. with a phrase that my brother showed me saying, "My disability is invisible," of which I made a hat for myself. So I decided to make hats, shirts, hoodies, for both men and women on spreadshirt.com. All you have to do is search for "My disability is invisible." It's in green, and that's mine. You'll know it's me because when you click the sale icon, the same little Divergent Mind icon comes up. And I hope you'll support me. I make about $5 per shirt or per sale. Everything else goes to Spreadshirt. But that's okay because it's still a better deal than a lot of other places. And I really hope you'll support me. Come check me out on the YouTube. Teach me how to do that properly so I can have a community there too. And I await your response. Have a lovely day. Jay.
Hey people, take a listen to the Divergent Mind podcast. You get both insight into living with a serious mental illness and get to listen to a lovely tale about a journey cute little animals need to take. Don't miss out, and remember, divergent minds don't need to think alike.
Please go to ratethispodcast.com/divergentmind and tell me what you think. Thank you very much. Yours truly, Jay.